We're going to go to our next stop. This is our third stop, Chrome Island. So to get there, we're going to, of course, hop into our canoe and we're going to start paddling south. I guess we probably want the tide to be nice and high, so we're not really fighting any current. And it's like 25 kilometers, so this is going to be like 4 hours probably of good solid paddling to get there. Chrome Island is this rocky little islet just off the south tip of Denman Island. You guys are probably not too far from there today. I don't know if folks have been there, maybe Coast Guard types. So Chrome Islet, this funny rocky little islet, is a lighthouse station and Coast Guard station, and it's been well known to archaeologists for a long time because it's the richest concentration of these rock carvings, rock art carvings, we call petroglyphs, in British Columbia. It's not like the entire island is covered in them, but there are many, many hundreds all over the surface of them. And it's just a sandstone outcrop, right? There's sandstone all over Denman and Hornby, and there's a handful of other rock carvings on Denman and on Hornby. But this place was special for some reason. For some reason, people really like to come here and carve these little things. So bear this image in mind. I don't have a scale bar, but this thing is like maybe as big as a Frisbee, something like that, not too huge. So burn that one into your mind. The next slide I'm going to show you is in relation to a project that was undertaken at this little boathouse. And the archaeologist who was on this operation, named Colleen Parsley, convinced DFO to do a high resolution, three-dimensional scan of the entirety of the island with the recognition that there's probably rock art under this house that hasn't been moved for 120 years. And so they did this great scan. So bear this one image in your mind. And this is what the scan looks like. This is this one guy right here. So if you're to stand there naked eye and like, you know, full sun, the way I have been a couple times out there, you can maybe see 20, maybe 30 images at that one panel. That's one of 4 major panels at the location. But with this high resolution scan, you can see there's actually probably something more like 200 within that field of view. And they're layered on top of one another, right? So it's not like they're all produced at one big go. It's that people came back again and again and again and added to them. You see a lot of common features. You get these guys with really square heads or really rectangular heads. I don't know what that's about, and I'm not going to pretend like that's about, but that's certainly what people were experiencing or seeing here. You see some fish or some whales. We got a sun. What this is telling you, this place was profoundly important. For whatever reason, people came here again and again for hundreds and hundreds of years to carve these faces, carve these images. I'm not certain why people carved those images. I doubt they were just doodling, just passing the time, because if people did that, we'd probably have carved images all over the bloody place around here, but we don't. We've got like 500 on this island and 12 on the rest of the Comox Valley. So there is something about this place. Elsewhere in British Columbia, you have these rock paintings up to the north here as well, and especially inland where we call them pictographs. They're this red ochre or tummuth with bear fat or salmon oil or something and painted onto rock surfaces. Archaeologists tend to interpret those a lot of the time as places where people are going to spirit quests to try to encounter those animals or spirit beings. And part of that process in the Coast Salish and Interior Salish perspective is once you receive that spirit, you leave an image of it there to mark it so that the next generation knows where that was and can acknowledge that you had that experience as well. So that might be what's going on here. It might be that this island is one of those really, really important places. You know, I wish I knew. I wish there was some really cool oral history that described some spiritual thing there. But I don't have that. All I've got is all this really, really cool rock art. But it was important for some reason like that, right? Some people are coming back and having similar experiences, drawing similar figures again and again and again for centuries. But my favorite out of all of these is this one right here. And I don't think he's on this panel, but this is clearly a blown up version. Can you guys see what I've circled there in red? What is it? It's a cross. Would it surprise you guys to know that Pentlatch people didn't wear crosses in pre-contact times? It should. This is really remarkable. This is the only Christian iconography in any rock art in the entire Pacific Northwest. So from Alaska to Oregon, this is the only time an Indigenous person decided it was important to put something Christian, something obviously Christian, in a place of very high probability of spiritual importance. I can say that we don't know there is no way to date this rock art, right? This is a carving into a piece of stone that's 70 million years old. So if we date the stone, it'll tell us it's 70 million years old. That's not a surprise, but we can't date the rock art itself. On this island, there is a little skiff of shellmitten, right? People are camped there long enough that they're throwing away their shellfish, they're eating herring, they're hanging out with their pet dogs. And we can date the stuff of the shellmitten. So we know the shellmitten dates to 1400 to 1600 AD, so still 200 years prior to contact, people living there. I bet you they're there for a lot long before that as well. But that date doesn't jive terribly well with these crucifix wearing guys. I also note this guy's mouth is open, right? His mouth is open. It looks like he's saying something or talking, and he's got a round head, and everybody else has a square head. So it's not just that he's Christian, he stands out for other reasons as well. And so I have got two hypotheses or possible explanations that sort of explain this one image in particular. I know for a fact that the first Christian Jesuits to visit this part of the world visited Denman Island in April of 1860. I know that because the British were there at the time making charts, and they commented on these French missionaries coming in, and they hated each other and didn't even talk to each other because they were Anglican, of course, so they're not going to talk to these bloody Catholics who are coming in. And I also know this because I've got the baptismal records, because Catholics, you can slack them for a lot, but they keep really good records. So I have the baptismal records from 1860 when they baptized these Comox and Pentlatch people and gave them new names like Joseph and Marie and these funny French names. So it could be that the Pentlatch and Comox people living there in 1860 on Denman decided that this encounter with these Jesuits was so important that they marked it there on the island where they marked all these other really important encounters or remembrances. That very well could be. And if that's the case, if people are making rock art into the 1860s, that's probably more recent than most archaeologists would have thought it as well. But there's another possible explanation for this as well too. I mentioned a couple slides back that concept of the foreseer, the person who can speak to the dead and see into the future. Sion, I think the name is. Siwin is the name. These people could foretell the future, right? And you get this all across British Columbia. Well before the first Jesuits ever show up, people knew they were going to come. You can go to any part of British Columbia and they'll hear stories that they know that they're going to come. And they always say they're going to be in robes and they're going to do magic and they're going to have signs, and they shouldn't be trusted. Again and again, the major themes. And so I think it's equally plausible that one of these Siwin had a dream, had a foretelling of these Jesuits, that we knew they were going to come because they sure as heck ended up there, and then marked that dream, carved the image representing that dream on this really, really important place. So I'm sort of ambivalent, both of those explanations. I sort of prefer the latter, but I'm not as convinced of it as the former. But I think either are perfectly applicable here. But this is remarkable. Of the thousands of pieces of rock art over all of British Columbia, this is the only one with any Christian iconography in it. So quite a remarkable place.